Hello, everyone. Hello. Hi. Anna Walker here with StabThingsIntoExistence.com. Welcome to the studio. We are going to talk about odd fibers today. Now, what do I mean by odd? Well, generally speaking, when we're talking about felting, we're talking about wool fibers. Wool fibers, any breed of sheep, um, is considered a wool fiber. But there are other fibers that are considered wool type fibers as well. And they can be a little more expensive. So they're usually luxury fibers like this Angora that is so soft. This is from a friend's bunny that they no longer have, and I have a limited amount of this that I am saving for a special occasion, maybe a wedding shawl or something. But it is about the only bright white fiber I have ever seen in my 14 years of fiber work. But Angora is definitely a luxury fiber. Most of the fibers we're going to talk about today are considered luxury fibers. Not all of them, but I want to tell you a little bit about all of the different fibers that are out there. And I'm not even going to be able to show you all of them because I don't have all of them. For instance, another luxury fiber is camel. Very, very soft and luxurious. Another luxury fiber is yak. You can have beautiful alpaca and llama fibers. This is a Surrey alpaca roving, and oh, so soft. And I've got enough to do a very beautiful shawl or wrap with this very thin, cobwebby kind of feel to it. So, this is another one that is waiting for that special project. Now, some of these fibers are not animal fibers. And let's talk about those. For instance, we've got this sample of polyester fiber that I got from one of my fiber suppliers. And it's a beautiful blue, and it will be gorgeous used with a wool of some sort because polyester will needle felt just fine. It just won't wet felt, and wet felting is my usual go to. So this is going to have to be used sparingly, and it's going to have to be trapped between layers, even if they're very, very, very thin layers of wool, so that the wool will, grab a hold of each other, and the polyester fiber will be stuck in between, sort of like the Oreo filling. Um, then there's cotton. And cotton is, a natural fiber, yes. It's a very short staple. I mean, think about those cotton balls that you see. That's a very, very short staple. So difficult to spin, tricky to spin. There are some folks that spin cotton. But for me, it's again another fiber that I use along with wool. The cotton fibers are close to the Angora as far as the bright white, but you can see, I mean, this Angora, even the cotton doesn't come close. It's still got sort of that hint of cream behind it. But cotton fibers are wonderful to use for texture and to give you a little bit of texture is really the only word that comes into mind because when you trap something like cotton that won't wet felt in between two layers of fiber, the that will wet felt, the wool fibers are going to attach in different ways, so it gets kind of lumpy and bumpy and wrinkly, and it just gives you some amazing texture. So cotton is another one that's a lot of fun. But let's talk about the luxury fibers because some of those I've got a lot of. Let me turn the camera down. So let's talk about silks. Okay, I'm going to talk about silks first because I have bags and bags of silk. And silk comes in a number of different preparations. And these are a few of my favorites here. Now, let's start with my absolute favorite and the first thing that I started collecting, and that is silk hankies. Now, silk Yes, it's a natural product, but no, it doesn't count as an animal fiber. It will not wet felt. It has to be trapped within layers of wool in order to have this grab hold of the wool when you're wet felting. Needle felting, you can needle felt with it, but again, silk is something that is best blended or combined with a feltable fiber. Now, this is called a silk hanky. When the cocoons are cleaned of their saracen, I think that's the name of it, saracen. Um, they are then stretched over a square form. It's got 4 pegs on it, and they just stretch those cocoons over, and they stack them and stack them and stack them until they get to a certain number. Now, this doesn't look very thick. It's about as thick as, a luxury washcloth. This is not one silk hanky. This is dozens and dozens and dozens of silk hankies, and you can pull them off in big bits. Make sure that you've got very nicely moisturized hands, or this will stick everywhere. But even with this smaller bit, I've got easily, I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, I can see 6 or more hankies here. And you can see through this, so you know that those hankies are very, very thin. And the reason that I gravitated toward hankies at first was because of the colors. Because fiber dyers will take these silk hankies and they will dye them in these amazing color combinations that just spoke to me first when I started collecting luxury fibers. And I just absolutely adore using silk hankies in wet felting because they give you, I'm going to try and peel off a single hanky. Nope, still got more than one there on each side. I love using these because I can stretch them out. I can pull them off in individual bits. I can contort them into different shapes. I can use them in so many different ways, and they give an amazing sheen and some beautiful appearances. I mean, I can see this as, sort of a night sky nebula kind of look here. But silk hankies, one of my favorites, and I got a whole bag full of them here. Then we have my next favorite way to get silk, and that's a silk lap. Now, a silk lap is a different preparation of the silk, and don't ask me what the difference is. I couldn't tell you if my life depended on it. But it is more of a bat type feel to it. And again, you can peel it off in different layers, but I love this because it is almost roving like in this bat form. I can take it and I can stretch it out, and I can get some amazing texture, a beautiful lace-like texture, just by peeling off and pulling this open. And this makes for a beautiful addition to a wet felting project. Now, and because the lap has got these open bits in it, the fibers only need to really be on one side, and I can leave this on the top of the surface, and there's enough openness to this beautiful silk lap piece that the fibers will migrate through it and it will capture it just beautifully. So silk lap is another favorite of mine. And then we get to the recycled sari silk. This is a waste product from creating sari silks, and it's basically just the very, very thin sari threads that are left over on the looms for creating the sari fabrics. And you can cut this, you can make smaller amounts, but you can see that it gives you a beautiful lace type design that can add some sheen and some sparkle and some texture to a felting project. And again, like most other silks, this comes in all kinds of different colors and sheens and is just amazing to use as a special little addition to a project. So that is the silks. Now, before I go into the next one, I want to show you a combination of the next one and silk. This is a roving that is partially silk and partially Firestar. And I want to show this to you. Can you see the sparkle from the Firestar? It's just that metallic kind of shimmer. And this is a lovely little sample that I got in a package that I had ordered, and it's just got some fun colors of silk and a little bit of that Firestar to get that sparkle going. So that's a segue into Firestar. And Firestar, like silk, comes in a lot of different colors, but you can see that it's got that shimmer of that metallic fiber in there. And I just love using this. Now, Firestar, man-made product, so it's one of those things that you use very, very sparingly, but man, do you get a whole lot of bang for the buck when you are using that Firestar. Let's see if I can get a different color on here so you can see it a little easier. Can you see that metallic fire on there? I mean, it's just a beautiful shimmer, and using a little bit of Firestar very sparingly will add a huge pop to any wet felting project that you're doing. Now, Firestar you can also needle felt with. Again, you've got to make sure, because it doesn't have any it doesn't have any scales like wool fibers, so you're going to have to make sure that you've got some wool fibers to go along with it so that it will be captured by the felting. And now we come to bamboo, and bamboo is another thing that I have a fair amount of options with. Bamboo is very, very similar to silk in the sheen that it gives to a project. And because it's a plant fiber made from bamboo, obviously, it needs to be combined with a wool fiber in order to have it fully integrate into either a wet felting or a needle felting project. But again, like the silk, bamboo gives you this amazing sheen that can just give a richness to your fiber project. Now, like bamboo, and I don't have any right now, I did at one time have a small amount, but I think I've used it. Something that's very similar to bamboo in the sheen that it gives is milk fiber. Yes, they make fiber out of the milk proteins from milk. Who would have thought? But milk fiber is very, very similar, in my opinion, to bamboo fiber in the sheen that it gives, very much like silk, and it's something that you would use sparingly just to bring that sheen into a project. So those are the luxury fibers that I have. Now I want to go to a quirky fiber that I have, and these are called neps. Now, wool neps are a byproduct of the carding process, and if you have ever washed a sweater or worn a sweater and you've noticed the little pilling that happens on your sweater, that's basically what wool neps are. They are a pain in the tuchus to use because with needle felting, you will more than likely stab these with your needle and impale them on your needle felting needle instead of integrating them into your project. So I use wool neps in wet felting primarily, and I always, like silk, make sure that I trap it between layers of wool, because there are, if you look really closely, there are little bits on the edges that can be trapped by the wool fibers. But by and large, these will not felt into the project unless you have trapped them underneath, at the very least, a super thin layer of wool over the top. So I use these to add that extra little bit of texture. And yes, they do come in a couple of different sizes. And I'm going to put the green ones on my hand here because the green ones are a larger nip and they're fluffier. They haven't been really agitated to make them smaller. It's just dependent on the fibers that they come from, how small or how large these neps are going to be. But when I use these, I use them as the top layer with just, as I said, a very, very thin layer of wool fibers over the top to trap them in. And then afterward, when I'm using neps in a project, I do a fair amount of hand stitching around the neps because with a regular sewing needle, a very fine sewing needle, and my embroidery floss that I use when I am stitching on a felted painting, I can again get a little more trapping of these neps into the project. But neps are a really fun way, and they're an odd fiber, that's for sure. They're a very fun way to add texture and dimension to a felting project. So that's what I have for you today, talking about odd fibers. Now, I'm going to move the camera up here in a sec. The oddest fiber I have ever worked with, I was in Hutchinson and about to teach a class, and my friend Andy, the owner of the Wool Market and DIY School, said that someone had stopped into the shop and had given her a baggie full of their dog's fur for me to use in felting. Yeah, very, very soft fur. And yes, you can use dog fur, you can use cat fur. If you've got, a dog that sheds a lot, maybe it's a collie, maybe it's a St. Bernard, that's got a decent staple of fiber, staple meaning how long the fiber is, and it's soft, absolutely you can use it. There are some people that think it's a little strange, but there are other folks that take those fibers from their favorite pet and they create mementos. And what I have found is that when you're using cat fur or dog fur or anything like that, um, I have found that generally speaking, adding a little bit of wool to it helps it to fully felt. I have not looked at the scans of dog fur and cat fur to see what their scales are like on the fibers. I do know that because they're an animal fiber, they do have them. And I just don't know how large those scales are. And they may be very, very fine scales, which is why I found probably that adding a little bit of wool to a project when I'm using dog fur or cat fur helps that to integrate and to felt up better. So that's today's little talk about odd fibers. Um, if it's a fiber, you can felt with it. And I think you're going to find a lot more recycled fibers out there from things like plastic and polyester that are definitely needle feltable. But wet felting, again, anything that is not an animal fur or an animal fiber is not going to be able to be wet felted unless it is trapped or combined with feltable wool. So just keep that in mind. I was at the fabric store yesterday or the day before, and I noticed that I'm seeing a lot more recycled yarn out there. So if you want to utilize in your needle felting projects, recycled yarn that's at the fabric store, at the yarn store, absolutely, give it a try. Remember how we took that yarn and we just cut smaller segments of it and then used our dog brushes or our hand carders to fluff that out into fiber again? Go for it. Give it a try. Have fun. Play with it. But any kind of fibers, anything that's fibrous, you can utilize. There's banana fiber, there's pineapple fiber, there's the list is endless. You will find fibers out there that will just shock you, and yes, you can felt with them. So if it's a fiber, you can felt with it. Just depends on the type of felting, whether it's wet felting or needle felting, and depends on whether or not you need to incorporate some wool into the project as well. So that's our little talk today about fibers and weird fibers and odd fibers. Tomorrow will be a Fan Friday, and it's already scheduled and ready to go. And next week, we've got Art with Anna projects, some projects that I've picked out specifically for you to have some fun with your kids, not felting related, but throwback to when I first started going live 2 years ago, having projects for kids to help parents get 15, 20, 30 minutes of breather time or coffee time or bathroom time. So I've got 5 fun projects for next week. Very easy to do, and you probably already have the supplies at home. So I'll talk to you all when I get back from Iowa a week from Monday, and I wish you a good weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye, guys.